Yes. You want me to do it? Okay, so we have a few of our other staff members here. Once we get to the Q&A portion of this evening, we do have Cleve Gurney, who is our Deputy Director of Engineering. We have Mike Van Mitty, who is our Acting Deputy Director over Traffic. Traffic engineering. And then we have Paul Lowenthal, who's up there in the alcove. He is our fire marshal. So we do have some resources here this evening, as I mentioned, as we get to the Q&A portion, should any of the questions pertain to the work that they do. Okay, so this evening, our meeting is scheduled from 5 to 6 p.m. And as we get started, it's not up there on the screen, but we do have a statement that we like to read off around what we expect for folks who are participants here in terms of civility and making sure that we stay on track with the meeting and that we maintain our structure so that we are able to get through our presentation. But before I read that, just a reminder for those who are coming in that we have up at the podium over here some orange cards. Should you want to write any comments down or any questions, as I mentioned before, not everybody always feels comfortable speaking up at the podium, so we do have the orange cards as another way for you to provide your comments, and those could be collected by our staff over here. If you want to just make your way over to this side, we can easily collect those for you, or just wave them from where you're sitting. We can easily collect them that way as well. We will have the Q&A portion after the presentation is over, and what we'll do is we'll use both of these podiums so that we do have the mics available. So once we get to that section, what we'll do is we'll ask you to queue essentially at each of those podiums, and then we'll go back and forth for each one. We will ask that we maintain around 3 minutes just so that we are able to get through everybody, and I will kindly help to remind you whenever we get close to that point, but we do want to make sure that we honor everybody's interest with any questions that they may have. I also want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded this evening. So if there's anybody who is unable to make it or you would like to go back and watch it at a later time, you'll be able to access that from our website. And then the last reminder that I will share is that this is what we call our neighborhood meeting. This is it. So no application for this project has actually been submitted at this time. So this is more concept, and it gives the staff an opportunity to talk about the process, and it gives the applicant a chance to talk about what they're envisioning for this particular project. Okay, and Madeline, if we are able to put the civility statement up, that would be helpful. Thank you. But basically, it's a very long statement, so I'm not going to read all of it. But the intent is to make sure that we honor the civility and be respectful of everybody here in the audience. And we ask that that you don't shout from your seat or raise your hand from your seat. We really do want to try to get through the whole presentation this evening. So again, as I mentioned, we'll be using the 2 podiums up at the top for that structured Q&A process. Okay. I think with that, we will go ahead and turn it over to Hannah to begin talking about the project and the process.
All right, thank you. Let me get my presentation up on the screen. Just give me 1 second. All right, thank you everyone for attending. This is the neighborhood meeting for 599 Montclair Drive, file number PLN 260079. And tonight is June 22nd, 2026. Sorry, 1 second. I need to get this. Okay, here we go. All right, the purpose of a neighborhood meeting is a chance for the community to hear about a project early, a chance to meet the applicant team and ask questions, a chance for you to share your thoughts and feedback, and no decisions are made at these meetings. Participation for virtual attendees. Tonight's meetings will only accept verbal comments from people attending in person. If you are watching virtually, You are encouraged to submit written comments at any time during the review process, and you can send them directly to me, Hannah Michelson, Senior Planner. For those of you listening, I'll read my email address, which is hmichaelson@srcity.org. All right, so let's go to today's agenda. Right now, we're actually in step one. We're in the welcome and introductions with city staff. We're also kind of discussing the overview and process of the meeting. From here, I will be turning these over to our applicant project team to discuss the project. Then we will follow with community questions and comments. And finally, we'll have closing and next steps. So briefly, I'll discuss the project. 599 Montclair Drive proposes to develop 17 detached single-family homes on a 23.14 acre vacant site. It would create 17 single-family lots and then 2 parcels. And the applicant team will present the project in more detail following my presentation. Here's an aerial location of the parcel with the star. And this is located, in Rincon Valley area. The general plan and zoning for this parcel is very low residential, very low density residential. And then it's a PD policy statement, PD 0092 for its zoning district. So finally, next steps. The project is in the earliest stage. It's conceptual at this point. We've not received any formal applications. The purpose of the meeting is potentially to provide community feedback that may be incorporated into a future submittal. The applicant expected entitlements may include the tentative map, hillside development. Once the formal application is submitted, we would send out another postcard mailer to all neighbors within 600 feet of the project site, similar to what most of you presumably received. The project and any required studies like traffic or environmental, infrastructure, fire would all be requested, prepared, and reviewed during a formal application process. No technical studies have been received up to this point. And finally, written public comments are welcome at any time throughout this process. So next steps today, right now, the neighborhood meeting, and then from here, formal application submittal, and then planning commission review. And again, there would be multiple notices that would be sent out, as well as signage to let you know that this was happening. And in every single part of the process, we would like public comment. It's an opportunity and it's welcome. All right, thank you for attending. Your feedback is an important part of the review process. Here's my contact information, and I'm going to queue up for the applicant. And finally, I'll read out my number in case anyone's listening by phone. It's 707-543-4665. Sign out, right? It's a PDF. Yeah. Is this one? Yeah. All of them? Yeah, it starts the yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Control L. Oh. So all right.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. For anybody that came in late, I'm Dennis Dalby, Civil Design Consultant. I'm the project civil engineer for this project. I think you've all had a chance to review the design concept narrative. Thank you. So again, as Hannah said, we're proposing a development of 17 fairly large lot parcels, single family home, 2 separate parcels that are basically open space. One will be for LID features. That's parcel A in the, that would be the southwest corner. And parcel B, where the access road to the water tank will be left untouched. The idea is to extend St. Francis Road at its end point today, extend that up into a private street, gated access. We would modify the city's existing tank access road at the new extension and shorten their distance to the tank. We don't plan on doing much of anything to that existing access road and the drainage associated with it. We're going to utilize it for drainage on this project. We're also going to utilize the existing driveway and access to this lot that is off of Montclair Drive. It will be widened to the minimum 20 feet necessary to be considered an EVA. And we are proposing some roadway improvements connecting to the cul-de-sac at the end to utilize that as an EVA. Not much more to talk about. That's the plan. We have preliminary architecture, Hannah, if you'd please. So we have a variety of 4 different preliminary architecture layouts that that we would obviously run through the city and get approved. And that's the project in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions I can, and look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, so thank you.
Correct. That's correct.
Mhm. So the question was, the design consultant are they a part of the city staff or are they separate as part of the applicant? And the answer is, he is not part of city staff. He is separate with the applicant for the project. Okay, so before we start asking questions from the audience, I do want to go ahead and shift gears to the Q&A portion. Thank you for that. Okay, so so what we can do is we can clarify a couple of the acronyms as people are making their way up to the podium if you have any questions. So we'll go ahead and take a few moments to have anybody go ahead and make their way up to the podium. And then if you could clarify those, I don't even, the EVA and the LID.
Glad to. So an EVA is an emergency vehicle access, and it is generally they are gated and they are opened by emergency response personnel and utilized during emergencies. LID is low impact development, and that is the stormwater cleaning that we're required to perform anytime that we add or replace a minimum of 10,000 square feet of impervious surface.
Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and start over here with this podium. And if you need to, on the side, there is a button that helps to move it up and down if needed. It should be on that side. Okay, go ahead and start over here. Yep.
Okay.
There should be a little light at the microphone that helps to indicate if it's on.
No light.
It is on. You'll want to be very, very close to the mic.
They're on. Go.
Hello, can you
Yep.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Andrew Smith. I live in the area on Santa Teresa Drive. And I just had a few questions that kind of really bother me about this whole project from the start. The city is implementing its wildland urban interface fire area. I'm glad that Paul Lowenthal is here. Why would the city want to put houses in this area that could burn very easily and cause the neighborhood, not just St. Francis Acres, but Piedmont Heights to burn down? I mean, the city's trying to get us away from being in danger, and this goes direct opposite to it. In case people aren't aware of it, in 2020, the glass fire came down the hill at about 1 in the morning. Had the city not gotten a bulldozer to create a 10-foot wide dirt break line behind our houses, even into Piedmont Heights, the neighborhood would have burnt down. So why would you want to put houses in this area that could be repeated, in the future? Why would you put people in danger? So that's a couple. I'm not sure about the entrance to St. Francis Road. Right now, it's a dead end, I believe, and the proposal is to open it up. Is that normal for the city to do something like that for these type of projects? And then, of course, on Montclair Drive, he's going to widen it. We heard that a couple of years ago for a prior project that didn't go through. So those are kind of my concerns, considering the city is really pushing hard on the wildland urban interface area to get us to harden our landscaping. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Smith, for the question. For those that didn't hear, my name is Paul Lowenthal, the Division Chief Fire Marshal for the Fire Department. So there's a number of points that I'll attempt to kind of get through. I think it's important to note that the current maps that were released were adopted by the city about a year or so ago. So as a point of clarification, the only thing that we're doing differently right now with our wildland urban interface is essentially laying over our local wildland maps with the state's previously adopted areas. It's also interesting to note that in the area close to this project, in the Skyhawk area, that area used to be previously mapped as the state's very high, like the highest level of risk. And that level of risk is actually backed down in this project area and the Skyhawk, Mountain Hawk areas. The area just outside of the project area is now a moderate, and this is the area that the project falls within as a high. But we've seen the level of risk actually come back to where it used to be. It used to come down much further down towards Sonoma Highway, whereas now the level of risk has been pulled back, and that's actually part of why we lessened the restrictions and have requested that council actually concur with the state's map with their own local WUI or wildland urban interface to reduce the risk and pull the level of risk or the mapped area further up towards the hill. I've obviously worked with a lot of residents in this community. I recognize a lot of the names and the faces. I will and take this for what it is, but I've heard a lot of the concerns over this lot and other lots in the area with vegetation. One thing that's important to note is that this project, when we do build in this area, those homes would be built to current wildland urban interface standards and building codes. And sir, let me finish my conversation, okay? So one of the things that we've noted is that when mapping is done by the state, they do actually take development into account for the reduction of risk. So if you have a wildland area that essentially borders a populated area that is built with non-compliant older construction, and you're essentially now putting in homes in between the two that are built to current standards, one could actually argue that it's somewhat reducing the risk, but those homes that would be in that area would be built to current standards. And there would not be the open, undeveloped grasses, at least down the lower elevations.
Okay, thank you. You want to speak to the traffic aspect of the road?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm Mike Van Mitty. I'm the city's acting traffic engineer. So it's very common for locations to have what we call a stub out for a future through street. And so that's what we see here. It was expected when it was originally built that there would be a continuation of the street. And so that is a common feature of how we design our roadways.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and go. Thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and move over to this podium.
Hi, my name is Nancy Manning, and I live on Yerba Buena Road, just below the water tower line. And so my question is in regard to drainage. I've heard that they're going to try to use the existing storm drain that runs along that water tower road, which is great. There's also a lot of natural springs up on that hill, and I don't know how many of you have been up there, but I have. I hike up there with my grandkids all the time. And there's a lot of water and natural springs up there that this development would interfere with. So my question is, how is the owner and the planners for this project, how are you going to handle those springs and the diversion of that water? At my property, I have an easement along the side of my property that has a culvert in it that runs from that open space, that parcel behind me that I don't own, down to the storm drain in my street. So I want to know how water is going to be traveling. I've also had to put in additional, at great expense and time, additional drainage along the back of my house to collect surface and groundwater that comes down off of that hill to keep it from going underneath my foundation. It's all working beautifully, but any development up there is going to impact that. So that's my concern. I would like to see some kind of a drainage impact study done to see how this development is going to affect all of that water. And it doesn't just affect me, it affects everyone on that side of the road. Okay, that's it.
I'm Cleve Gurney, Deputy Director of Engineering Development Services. So a drainage report will be required as part of the submittal application package. So that's something our team reviews, and we ensure that all the existing pipes that they're connecting to have capacity for the project, but we're also reviewing that there's no impacts to any of the adjacent properties. So water from the homes aren't just spilling over into existing backyards. If there are easements on any of those other properties that are in favor of this property and they do have the interest and the rights to drain there, then that'll be listed in the title reports and those easements themselves. But we will review all the drainage on site. We'll review all the drainage impacts that are downhill and adjacent to the properties.
Including natural springs. Not just, I'm not talking about sewer and I'm not talking about irrigation in these yards, but natural springs. There's a lot of them up there.
Yeah, so they have to, the civil engineer, the applicant has to account for any sort of runoff that is leaving the site.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and over to this podium.
This is on. Okay, my name is Mike Ulrich. I live on Yerba Buena underneath the water tower. I moved there 22 years ago, actually the day that George Bush invaded Iraq. And it was before I bought the house, the realtor did an extensive background on what could happen to the hill behind me. And there's no possible way that I would have moved there if they were going to put 27 homes behind me. So my understanding was that it was allotted to, you could have 5-acre lots and that I shouldn't be able to see any of those homes. And so now this is a travesty and I really object to it. The man that owns this property is untrustworthy. He is, has bamboozled the neighborhood. Before, during the last fire, he came by the cloak of darkness and tried to dig a road, the access road from St. Francis, under the cover that he was trying to make a fire barrier, but it was illegal, and he had to cover that up. Before that, he started to cut into the hill. I would say it was probably roughly 17 years ago. Just by the cloak of darkness again, brought heavy equipment up there and started cutting an envelope to build a house without any permits. So this man is untrustworthy. There are a lot of springs that Nancy mentioned. In fact, there's a drain just between the two of our houses, which is the only drain from that hill that entire hill, that entire property that was never managed until fairly recently. The city uncovered a bunch of rocks that they moved out and managed to channel water up above into down behind our hills again. And it goes meanders somewhere down into the only drain that's back there between our homes. So the city has not managed that ever in the time I've been there. And they did come up to look at it. The engineers came up during a terrible rain that we had, and they saw it. They had a ditto paper copy of what was supposed to be there with some kind of French drain that never took place. So I'm not trusting the city either. So I really don't appreciate this project. I would never have moved there. And one more question I'd like to put to is that who pays for the infrastructure to connect from the city sources to that project? Is that paid by the citizens or is that paid by that project? All of that water, all of that infrastructure. Okay, thank you.
So I can answer the question in regards to who pays for that infrastructure. So all the on-site construction is paid for by the developer. All the off-site, the connection points for the sewer, connection points for storm drain, any of the roadway work, trenching, all of that is paid for by the developer. Permit fees, inspection fees, and the actual construction of that work is paid for by the developer.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and over to this podium.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. My name is Phil Snodgrass. I live on Santa Teresa Avenue. I have a couple of questions for the project planner, Ms. Michelson. I sent you an email earlier today. I had a couple of questions. Number one, have you identified or has the project identified the sorts of financing? Who are the lenders or who are the financial institutions who are underwriting this project? That was the first question. Who is paying for this? The second one, any insurance companies who are underwriting this project, who they are, what, their limits of, how much they're going to pay in case of a loss, that sort of thing. Identify who the insurance companies are. And the last question I had was regarding whether the city attorney has been involved in this yet. As in, basically, this parcel is for one house only, and it has been that way ever since it was designed. So is the city attorney been brought in to confirm, yes, this has been changed, or no, it has not, and it's one house only? Because that's the way it's been zoned all this time. So if there's been a change, we should be aware of it. If there's been an attempt to change it, we should also be aware of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Philip. I'm going to have the applicant answer the questions regarding financing and insurance, and then I will touch on the third question after he's completed.
Don't have an answer for you. I'm the civil engineer. I really don't know how it's being financed or how it's being insured yet. There's really no project yet. We have not submitted for an application, and we have not started the CEQA process just yet.
All right, and then in regards to the city attorney involvement, we are still doing our due diligence to investigate this. And as I said earlier, we do not have a formal application, nor do we have any technical or supportive documentation. When we receive that, it will be referred to every city department, including legal, and clarity would be required on that point.
Okay, so we'll go ahead over to this podium.
Bill Didi, 1811 St. Francis Road, and I object to the proposed subdivision for the following reasons. Zoning, the proposed zoning change is inconsistent, I think, with the existing character of the neighborhood. There's no demonstrated demand or need of this community for a high-dense housing development in the Rincon Valley. From a fire point hazard, the project will increase the fire risk in the wildland urban interface area as identified by the State Fire Marshal in 2025 as a high fire hazard severity zone. The area has burned twice, 2017 and in 2020. The parcel currently consists mainly of grasses, which are flash fuels. Adding 17 homes will replace this fuel source with multiple building materials that will burn hotter and longer. Wind-driven embers and burning material, especially as wind speeds increase when compressed between structures, will threaten downhill residents and increase the risk of additional home losses. The fire department will need to operate further and higher within this fire zone, where the steeper grade may reduce water pressure as compared to with the existing neighborhood. I recently had my property inspected by an NFPA, National Fire Protection Association certified wildfire management mitigation specialist. He observed that the current grade at St. Francis Road would be hard on the arriving firefighter apparatus, the potential water pressure availability, along with a private gate access and multiple residents simultaneously evacuating higher up off the hillside may lead to a more difficult evacuation process. The road at St. Francis from Yerba Buena to its end is deteriorating and would require full roadway upgrades. Any upgrade would also need to address the utilities beneath the road, which are more than 50 years old. As is, the road is unlikely to withstand 3 to 4 years of continuous construction traffic that would be generated by this project. Hydrology. From developing this lot would significantly change the existing hillside runoff patterns and adversely affect the residents below the site. The project would also, I think, undermine the city's 2020 drainage and stabilization improvements, which cost the city and the taxpayers $1,500,000. The project was known as Road Access Stabilization Repairs for Tank R7. The project installed custom retaining walls, completed major grading to control hillside erosion along the steep ridgeline. Downstream drainage upgrades along Yerba Buena Road and St. Francis were intended to protect the St. Francis acre flatlands from localized flooding during the severe weather. Improvements were designed to manage runoff from a 100-year storm event, prevent water from overtopping street curbs or entering private property, and reduce erosion and backup during recent storms. Because the upgraded drainage system runs directly beneath the current access road to Yerba Buena, abandoning that road as proposed would eliminate access needs for future maintenance. The concerns of this proposal raised within this neighborhood could be avoided if the property owner deeded the property to the city in exchange for a contemporary written explanation from the city of Santa Rosa. The value of the donation would potentially offset future capital gains from the owner's other investments. The city, in addition to continuing maintaining the access road, would need to cut the grass extending 30 feet along the property line on an annual basis. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and move over to this podium.
Okay. So my question is about mudslides. Ooh, that's loud. So after the big fires, there were signs everywhere, mudslides. And I understand that the vegetation is gone. So now we're talking about grading, lots of heavy machinery. What happens to all that dirt? What happens to the hill is now, we're talking about going from slightly sloped to very sloped. What happens to the grading and the dirt? That's my question.
Thank you for the question. So during construction, the contractor and the engineer are going to work together to install best management practices that ensure erosion control, sediment control, dust control. All of that is counted for during construction. So there's different types of improvements for construction. So they'll be removed after construction. It's fully graded and landscaped and all that. But in regards to actual like mudslides during construction, when it's bare land, the engineer and contractor have a plan or would submit a plan to the city that's going to be reviewed. And that has to be in compliance with building codes, with any state requirements and local requirements that we have. So as of now, we haven't seen anything, so we can't make a determination. We can't approve what is shown on the plan right there. This is all very conceptual, but we will actually review all of that when they actually submit their applications.
And I just wanted to add that this project would require a major hillside subdivision review. So there are, strict requirements around grading, roads, et cetera, that would be looked at, and the project would not proceed without being able to meet our city standards. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. And most importantly, there's also restrictions on the time of year that the grading operations can occur. So obviously the winter time is when they don't want us grading the hillsides.
Thank you. Okay, this podium.
James Muir, we're on 5417 Santa Teresa. I have 3 questions. The first is the gentleman at the end of the table.
Can you speak into the mic? Just a little, you have to like put it right next to your mouth.
Yeah, I have to look over the podium to see. The
Sure, and if
gentleman
you-
at the end.
Mhm. I was going to say, you can also lower the podium just to your right side.
Okay.
There's a button right there. There you go. But you do have to still speak into the mic directly.
Right, I hear you. Is that okay now?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
First question of the 3, the gentleman at the end of the table, would you identify your company and organization, who you work for?
My name is Cleve Gurney. I work for the city of Santa Rosa. I'm the Deputy Director of Engineering Development Services.
Okay, so it's a city. Thank you. Second question is with Paul Lowenthal. Paul Lowenthal. It's a relatively short question. And for access to a property, what width roadway do you need?
So to clarify one of the statements that I made earlier, although the term EVA is emergency vehicle access, the technical code word is apparatus access road. In the city of Santa Rosa, we do use our apparatus access roads to have to be a minimum of 20 feet wide with no parking on it. So for a minimum clearance, you have to be 20 feet wide horizontally, 13'6" clearance vertically. And then just following up a little bit, in the city of Santa Rosa, we do designate our apparatus access roads or emergency vehicle access roads as to be used for evacuations also. So that is something that we do in the city, but it's at our discretion based on needs. But the short answer is 20 feet.
Thank you. So I've heard from you say that before. You have to have access to the 20. And the ownership of that flag lot is not totally owned by the applicant, only half. So it's about 14 and a half feet.
So that's a tricky question. Technically, the project as proposed with 17 housing units would only require 1 point of access. The city of Santa Rosa does have a more stringent requirement than state law, where we require a second point of access when you hit 50 housing units. So this one, although doesn't technically require the second access, if they were going to move forward with identifying that secondary road as an apparatus access road or an EVA, it would have to come into compliance with our requirements, meaning that the gate would have to have what we refer to as an opticom, where it would have to be controlled by our emergency lights. It would have to comply with our standards. It could not be less than our minimum standards if they were going to move forward with the road.
So I understand. I appreciate your answer. And the third item involves a statement in the narrative, which says that the open space reserve was removed by a court case. What was the court case? When was it decided? Who decided it? And what parties were involved?
The court case was back in the 1980s. That's about as much as I know about it. It was brought before a superior court and a judge ruled that the open space can be removed.
Okay.
So, and I just quickly, if I could just add, so again, my name is Jessica Jones. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning. So that is something that the city is still looking into, and we don't have a final determination as to where that is landing. So it's something that will be reviewed as part of any application moving forward. We would need to confirm that that is accurate.
Yeah. The representation that it was part of that court case should be closely questioned because of the structure and the way the subdivision was formed. The open space reserve was required to be placed and recorded prior to the subdivision recording. That easement was then deeded to the city and accepted by the city. So the city holds that easement. And that court case, as far as I could tell, does not address it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we'll go over here to this podium.
How's that for volume? Okay. My name is David Cox. I live walking distance from the 599 access point. And I have lots of concerns, too many for me to speak on right now. So I'm going to limit it. And my first issue to share is in response to the previous speaker who was concerned about landslide. I've made many observations of this property. I walk almost every day nearby. I have observed at the 599 access point on Montclair that this past winter there was mud movement at the drain at the lowest point of that private driveway. That should be significant information for the city to know, and that itself needs remediation. That's a drainage point that has suffered contamination from dirt and mud, and that affects us and the habitat in the area, our dear friends, the turkeys and the deer, the few that are left after the fire. And so I would ask that there be some attention paid to that. Secondly, I would suggest in response to the young man who talked about best practices during construction to, for example, protect water runoff. I appreciate your knowledge. It matches what I know about it. And I would suggest that the applicant has a history with regard to this kind of best practice. The applicant has in process right now a very small development of 3 houses nearby. And it's my understanding, and actually my observation with my own 2 eyes, that those best practices are not been and have not been followed at that site. And I believe the city may know already, because of a stop work order that I heard about, what that past history is. We're told in my study of psychology that the best way to predict future behavior is to look at past behavior. I am suggesting that we pay attention to that simple logic and look at the past behavior of the applicant and realize there's a responsibility of the city to make sure that if this applicant continues to build in our area, that they do so using either minimally acceptable or best practices. Thank you.
Okay, so what he's handing us is 90 signatures in, over 90 signatures in opposition of the project. So we will take that. Okay, we'll go over here to this podium.
She needs a restroom. I need to talk.
Oh, okay. So the restroom is just outside the doors down into the courtyard next to the elevators, and the code is 1010. Sure.
Okay. My name is Joyce Bechtel, and I live at 770 Hillmont Court. And we back up to there's just open space behind us, and it is around the hill from where this is. I'm wondering if a geological report has been done and survey or whatever it is they do, because the hill is considered to be well, we always called it the moving mountain because it slips and there's a lot of problem with it. And you could see after the fire around some of the areas where, because there wasn't grass growing and it was just slipping. And so we were told that that whole hill, and I don't know how far around the study that was made earlier goes, but it's the same type of hill. It's not real stable. And so I think that needs to be looked at. And I am curious to know if there has been a study, like I'm talking about, for this particular part of the hill, geologically.
As far as I know, ma'am, nothing has been started yet. A geotechnical report will have to be prepared when we submit for entitlements. So that's part of the process, and that process hasn't started yet.
Well, I'm hoping someone will stay on it because that's a really important thing for that hill. That's all I have to say.
Yes, the city will require it.
Cleve Gurney, Deputy Director of Engineering Development Services. So a geotechnical report is a requirement. So that's something our building division is going to look at, the engineering division is going to look at. They'll have recommendations in there of the type of foundation that could be installed there, if any retaining walls are needed, how construction can actually occur during grading. In regards to a survey being needed, a requirement also is that a survey be done showing a topographic map survey, so we'll know what the grades are at. As a requirement for the hillside development permit, a slope analysis is required as well, and that's going to show us any slopes that are over 10% in grades. So then that's going to give information to the civil engineer, so he's able to figure out if any retaining walls or any other landscaping is needed in certain areas.
Okay, over here.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay? I wanted to comment in association with Bill Deede's comments. I've already sent mine into Hannah. We moved into St. Francis Road in 1974. So we've been in the neighborhood through, I don't know, 5 major fires in Sonoma, but the biggest one that hit our neighborhood was a glass fire. And I don't know how many of you were around in the neighborhood for that, but that was one horrible fire, similar to the LA fires, et cetera, with high winds. And I think in my report to comments to Hannah, I've covered all the items that people have talked about, but the one I'd like to highlight and the biggest concern I have is with the fire in high winds, there's nothing you can do to stop it. And you look at the plan, I don't know if everybody's walked through the neighborhood. If you haven't, go look at that ridge line where they want to put those 70 or I guess 10 homes and abut them right up to each other. And they're coming right down the hill from the fire zone of the glass fire. And it looks to me like it's just a natural disaster ready to happen in high winds and fire. Also, we have a pool in our property. The firefighters, and you have to take your hat off and give them so much credit for the great job they did in the glass fire, came in. There was low water pressure in the neighborhood, similar to LA. They ended up pumping about 1/3 of our pool out. We had a pump on our pool that probably saved our house and the neighbors. I mean, it was, I think the Press Democrat got a photo op of that and captured the nature of that fire. But for those of you that haven't seen that, please look at it. Look at the LA fires and the high wind fires. And this project is just set up to be a natural fire disaster from the perspective I've seen in the glass fire.
So I appreciate the comments. I want to clarify a couple things. Again, and I will try not to use acronyms, but what I really want to emphasize is that the homes that are built within this area, regardless of this project, if they are built within our local wildland urban interface, which overlays the state's already mapped areas, regardless of whether it's moderate, high, or very high, we treat all those properties the same. So requirements for the very high in the states apply to our properties in Santa Rosa at a high level also. So the property or any homes that are built, whether it's these or anything in our wildland interface, has to comply with what's referred to as Chapter 7A requirements out of the building code and the fire code. So the homes that are in your neighborhood are built prior to those requirements and are much more susceptible to ember cast. They are not designed to withstand embers and fire alone. The homes that will be built in those areas, if they're built in that area, have to comply with current standards, including home hardening, vent screens, a lot of other things that make them less susceptible to ember cast and fire spread which makes them less likely to be a cause of downwind ember cast. And again, like what I was saying earlier is, and again, this has nothing to do with this project, it's just how the state evaluates their risk. My understanding is the reason that we saw the reduction in risk in this particular area is exactly because of what happened in the glass fire. When you look at how the Tubbs fire burned and how the Nuns fire burned and the level of destruction based on the canyons, the winds, and the terrain, we lost in the city of Santa Rosa 3,000 plus homes. We know that. In the glass fire, I will challenge you to guess how many homes in the glass fire were actually impacted or within our burn scar. 1,152, and only a little over 30 homes burned across the entire glass fire. And a lot of that has to do with the topography, but also how we've improved how we fight fires and how we get people out of harm's way. So I understand the concerns, but I don't want people to think that we look at that area as the highest risk area in the city. Regardless of how we look at it, we have changed our tactics. And we've also seen how well that neighborhood did during the glass fire.
Hey, over here.
Good evening. My name's Tom Zembel, and my wife and I have owned Montclair Drive Home 591 right at the access road on the lower 40 where this development wants to be done for 46 years. So we've been here for all the bad fires. We've been here at this chamber 3 times now with different kinds of proposals. Originally, that lot, at over 20 acres, was deemed a one-house lot. And I'm fine with them building a one-house lot there. But the access road that runs along my property is in no way going to be improved to the point of being a city street. And the control of that road then makes it difficult for anybody trying to get out in the way of a fire if firemen and fire equipment are trying to get up there to help fight a fire. So we're all concerned about fires. The density of housing in that area is adequate. We ought to consider maintaining some of our open space and our hillside views. When we built our house, we had to get up a pole at the top of our roof so it could not be seen from Calistoga Road. Now, I realize those days are long gone. Councils come and go. According to this logic, if we put 30 houses up there, that'd be a protection for everybody else in the neighborhood. Building homes is risky. That area is prone to burn. And one of the reasons they were able to be so aggressive on the fire is our fire break of over 75 yards was a backfire was lit up through our property, up to our neighbor's property that withstood the flames coming down the hill and into the neighborhood. And we applaud all the firemen activity, the things they learned from the glass fire and the Tubbs fire previous to that. But it is an area that needs to be looked at very carefully as part of the aesthetic of Santa Rosa, which is one of the reasons we moved here almost 50 years ago. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll move over here to the this podium.
Hi, my name is Angie Daniel. I live on Ronaldo Street, and I used to work for the city of Santa Rosa in the stormwater department. And I now am with the county of Marin with stormwater. The only reason why I am speaking, because we have such an eloquent neighborhood who's doing a great job of defending our neighborhood and saying all of the right things, is because I do see the work that's being done on Spain Avenue, which is flat ground. There are no BMPs. You go out there and there's no best management practices, and he has rarely used them. My team has gone out there to enforce on him before, been in contact with his building inspector, and there's no guarantee. Yes, he's supposed to have BMPs in place, and you as the city and I know that that is not always the case, and I really, really think it is a terrible idea. Not just my opinion, it's just seeing the work that this guy does is not great. And by the way, all of these neighbors who are speaking are passing his project daily. multiple times a day and watching what his work is. And we've all been evacuated. I lived on La Cuesta Drive, which was an EVA access point where the fire, you're nodding your head, you know it, because there were fire lines on both sides of our four-sided house. So thank you, it did not burn. And I appreciate that the houses are going to be hardened, but I don't know that I have confidence in all of that. The other point I wanted to make was, as far as drainage goes, the storm drain system goes underground into a piped system, and then it goes out behind San Juan. I think, Mary Jo, is that the name of your street? It goes out behind her house. So will that storm drain system be replaced to fulfill the capacity? Is that going to be something that is actually looked at? It goes under Calistoga Road where they're doing improvements currently. Are they going to replace that storm drain system? Or does it have capacity? That's number one question. And then my number two question, I wanted to say, he has no ingress, egress, no wattles. He's disturbing soil currently. Of course, there's no rain, but he's still doing that right now. And then in previous years, I've heard that R7, I think that's the name of the water tower, has been destabilized. Has there already been a geological study for that hillside? If so, can our neighbors have access to the results? Where would we find those? And what type of environmental review is going to go underway for this development? Because this guy, once you approve it, it's going to be like whatever he wants to do. I can guarantee you that. He's going to be like City Ventures. And that's all my questions.
Cleve Gurney, Deputy Director of Engineering Development Services. Okay, first part I could speak on the underground conduit, I guess. So we haven't seen a drainage report yet. We don't know what the capacity of that pipe is. We're going to analyze the drainage report that Dennis and his team are going to be submitting. If it's undersized, they'll need to upsize it. If there's any sort of downstream impacts, like let's say it discharges to an open channel and then that open channel doesn't have capacity for it, they're going to have to mitigate either in.
It was in 1970. It was an issue.
So the additional context was the drainage swale on a neighboring adjacent property is not very big. It's shallow, drainage ditch, not an actual open channel like a. Okay. So yeah, as I just want to reiterate, we haven't seen a drainage report yet. We don't know where they're proposing to drain to, where each of these lots, all we can look at right now are contours on the geographic information system map and what was submitted for this neighborhood context map. Yeah, everything during this meeting, we're taking notes for, and it's everything we're going to be taking into consideration when we're actually reviewing the application materials. What was the other question? Do you recall? That geotechnical report, I am not sure if, so we're Plan Economic Development is who's at this table right here. We're the permitting department. We have traffic here and fire here. Any sort of capital improvement project runs through Transportation and Public Works. So we could always reach out to them and see what kind of reports were prepared when they did any sort of stabilization project. If it is information that can be released to the public, then that's something you could submit for a public records request, and that's something that would be released. But I'm not sure if we have that report or if it was ever prepared at that time.
I also just wanted to mention that CEQA review will be a part of this project. It hasn't been started, but it will be required in a number of environmental Oh, sorry, excuse me. CEQA stands for the California Environmental Quality Act. So that will be, which will, a large part of this project, and the applicant has been notified of that requirement. Should they want to submit a go ahead and submit a formal application.
Over here.
My name is Lillian Ordaz, and I live on Santa Teresa. I am very concerned about what's going to happen to the wildlife on that hill. The deer, the turkey, the quail. I grew up in LA, and I never saw anything like that in LA. And I have to say, in LA, there are a lot of developers that think that if there's a square inch any place, they should build a house on it. And I don't think Santa Rosa should be like that. I think this is a really special place. And I honestly think that anybody that doesn't think that's true, you should spend some time in LA and see what it's like to build houses back to back and next to each other, on top of each other. That is not a pleasant place to live. That's all.
Okay. I just want to do a quick time check. So we are at 6:02. We will go ahead and take the remaining questions here because we want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. But I did want to acknowledge that it is past 6 o'clock. Go ahead.
My name is Marcia Marin. I live on Ronaldo Street, right where all the wind comes down from the hill. There's a couple questions I want to ask. Who started this ball rolling? Was it the gentleman that people keep talking about? Was it the city? It seems like you've put in a lot of resources to come up with plans of where houses are going to be, what the houses might look like. It's a lot of work for something that just came up. When the Tubbs fire came, it took us an hour to go a quarter of a mile down to Calistoga Road. It won't get any better if you put more people up there. When I lived in Mississippi for a year, there was a fire behind our house in 2011, I think. The fire department couldn't figure out how to get in there to fight the fire. I just want to know who came up with this crazy idea.
All right, thank you, Marcia. So this is an applicant-driven project. The city's role here, we are like the permitting division. We intake the pre-application. We review it through the zoning code, which requires a neighborhood meeting, and eventually would, if we actually got a formal application, would then review it and submit it out for referral review to all the city departments as well as outside agencies. But this is the applicant's project.
Okay,
Who's
is the applicant here?
This is the applicant's civil engineer, his
But
representative.
he's not the applicant. He's just the mouthpiece for the applicant.
It's not a requirement, but his representative is here to discuss the project.
I'm his design engineer, not his mouthpiece. Thank you.
Still stupid.
Okay. All right, go over here.
Bill Didi again, 1811 St. Francis Road. Two questions to the design consultant. The first question is if this project went through exactly as proposed, how long would it take for all the understructure and be piped in? And then all 17 homes, would they be built simultaneously or in phases, which both was going to impact everybody in the neighborhood from a point of dealing with construction? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As far as how many homes are built at one time, that I don't have an answer for. That's up to the developer and whoever's building the homes. I'm lending myself to believe that these are going to be like spec homes, so they'll be custom homes built, as people buy the lots. As far as the infrastructure goes, to get the infrastructure in and to get the private street in, that's no more than a a year's worth of work, considering that we probably won't be able to work in the wintertime.
Okay, and we have over here to the left.
My name is Shaylin Gustafson, and I'm a resident of the.
Oh, if you could speak a little bit closer.
My name is
There
Shaylin
we go.
Gustafson, and I'm a resident of the St. Francis neighborhood. I am a Rincon Valley native. I come from 2 generations before. My grandparents, my parents, myself, and my children all live in the Rincon Valley area. Our house was originally purchased back in the early 70s. Back then, the wildfire risk was pretty well established. We all knew that it was a risky area. We knew this because of the fires of 1870, which is documented in SantaRosaHistory.com, the fires of 1909, the fires of 1964, and now we know from the Fountain Grove fires of exactly how dangerous the fire risk up there really is. I want to read you an excerpt I have here from the Congressional Budget Office's webpage on natural disasters and insurance. Insurers' coverage and pricing of the risk of natural disasters. How insurers set rates, diversify their risks, and finance claims payouts affects the affordability and availability of insurance options for homeowners. As climate change increases, uncertainty about the timing and size of catastrophic losses, insurers have began to adjust their prices. Continued development in areas of western states with high wildfire risk and in areas with high hurricane and flood risks prompts insurers to adjust their prices. So basically, this is a high wildfire risk area. Recently, as I purchased the home for my family, I've discovered that my only option for insurance in St. Francis is the California State Fair Plan. Under that State Fair Plan, I'm underinsured, and I got a discount this year at $3,600 a year, and I have to buy additional coverage to cover my home for things like basic liability and flooding. Altogether, my insurance costs are $5,000 a year. Now, that's just me right now. A lot of people are grandfathered into their policies haven't been canceled. But when it comes time to readjust these policies, the insurers are going to consider all of the risk in the neighborhood. Adding extra developments is going to increase the risks. Whether we consider that it increases it from a fire perspective, the insurers see it different. So what I want to know is, does the city take into consideration the cost and availability for insurance for all of the owners in the area when taking a planning development into consideration? And I just want to add a tidbit that I heard today. The best way to fight a wildfire is to prevent it in the first place. Hardening the homes that exist there is a really wonderful idea. We should all do it. But the fact is, these homes, as hardened as they are still a risk. And that not just affects the neighborhood, not just the immediate neighbors. This affects the schools, the libraries, the senior housing down the road, all across Rincon Valley, which in turn affects rates for everybody. So I really, really think that as a whole, we need to consider future generations' costs and risks. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to do another quick, you want to answer that first?
Yeah, just real quick. So just for clarification, so the city does not take into account things like insurance costs for future development. So the city's portion of our part in the review of these projects is to ensure consistency with our state and local ordinances and regulations. So while that's certainly something, that we know is a concern in the community, it is not a regulatory requirement for the city to review.
Okay, so we're going to take, I see 3 more comments, and we're going, because we are over time at this point, so I want to be respectful of everybody who has joined us this evening. Okay, we'll take 4 then, and then we'll wrap up the meeting this evening. Okay, over here.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me? Yeah, I guess so. My name is Bob Fassbender. I live on 5437 Santa Teresa Avenue, and we moved in about in 1985. And I just want to let the people know the observation I made during that time period. It started out with We look out the front window and it was a beautiful open space. And all of a sudden, Fountain Grove was built. And the city botched that a little bit because there was supposed to be no crest. Nobody should propose to build on the top of the mountains, right? But that was overseen for some reason. Now, we're looking at this side over here. I'm looking at my backyard. It looks beautiful as of right now. Is that going to be looking pretty much like Fountain Grove all of a sudden? I just want to make you all aware of it. This is my observation, and I think you're going to look at the same thing what I do. It's going to be built up, and we're going to have some problems. I know specifically with that builder. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Allison Smith. I live on Santa Teresa. I totally appreciate that, like, all of you individually, as you've been speaking, I feel like are trying to reassure us and say, like, of course we do best fire practices. Of course we'll do geological surveys. Of course we'll look at the water. And I hope that you would, and I hope that that's all accurate. But the thing that feels scary to me is that who's in charge of saying, you know, regardless of what the owner wants to do and what the application is, regardless of if the homes are beautiful, regardless of anything that is promised, it feels so separate, like everyone's just looking at their piece. And then if everyone makes their little piece okay, that it's suddenly okay. But who looks at it and says, this is just not a good idea. It's not a good idea for the neighborhood. Clearly the neighbors don't want it. It's not needed. It's not needed housing. We're all worried about a number of things. So is there somebody who looks from the city or whatever at the whole project and just says, sir, we're sorry, regardless of the fact that you've owned this property, you want to sell it, you want to develop it, you want to, you know, I'm assuming make quite a bit of money from this deal. Who can look at it and say, it's just not going to happen, even if we could grade the hillside in the way it should, and even if we could use really excellent fire stuff, and even if it's just still not going to happen because it's not what we want? Who does that?
That's an excellent question. And so, yes, so the process that we've described here, this is the review process that goes through all of our city departments, and all of the technical experts look and review at the technical analysis and plans that are submitted. But ultimately, the review authority for this project will be the Planning Commission. And so that is a 7-member body that is appointed by the City Council. And that is done through a public process. And so everybody that received public notice for this will receive public notice for that meeting. And you are all absolutely encouraged to come to those meetings, submit comments in writing that will be provided to the Planning Commission, and then also come to the meeting to speak. And the Planning Commission in their review does take into account all of the comments from the community and weighs that with the information that is provided from the technical pieces. Past that, any decision made by the Planning Commission is also appealable to the City Council. So there would be a potential second option if any decision made by the Planning Commission is appealed.
I prepared something to read, but I wanted to mention that.
I think,
Okay, is that right? Okay. I prepared something to read, but I wanted to mention. Huh?
yeah, the mic has to be very close to your mouth.
I'll see.
There we go.
Okay, so I prepared something to read, but I wanted to mention that Fountain Grove was built, either somebody changed the rules at the last minute or something, but there's supposed to be a rule about not building on a ridge line because of aesthetics. And they built it anyway, and it burned, and then it burned again. So I think we need to take into consideration past failures before we make another one. This area here that we're talking about is very dry. I've tried climbing that hill a couple of times with somebody, and the ground just crumbles away under your feet. And you can see how after a rain in the burned areas that there is washing down. So I think it's a very bad place to build. Also, I'm puzzled because I haven't heard anything anybody talk about, like this fire area? I don't know if that fireman is from the city fire department or the state. Because,
City of Santa Rosa.
okay, what about CAL FIRE? Aren't they supposed to be consulted about building in that area? Okay, because I read something about that recently and I wasn't sure. I thought that CAL FIRE. Okay. Okay. All right, there's that. And then, yeah, so I would think that should be a lot of engineering going into this before the city planners just decide to build it there, or it's okay. It seems like there should be a lot of really structural engineers looking at geological engineering factors and, and how the homes are going to be built there, or allegedly going to be there, that I understand have gone from 5 to 17 even before the pre-application meeting, which is what this is supposed to be, I think, pre-application. What I read, I will read, is I have been evacuated 4 times for fires from my home on Calistoga Road. As a resident of Rican Valley who experienced the gridlock and the bumper-to-bumper conditions trying to evacuate our neighborhood during past wildfires, emergency egress and traffic capacity are critical life or death issues for our community. A fast-moving fire requires clear paths, not just for us, but for evacuees traveling down Highway 12, conceivably from Kenwood, Agua Caliente, maybe even Calistoga. So all of that's going to be going on to Highway 12. Our local infrastructure is already absorbing significant new traffic burdens. The recent opening of Mahonia Glen at 153 Calistoga Road brought 99 multifamily units and over 115 parking spaces right to the Highway 12 and Calistoga Road bottleneck. And that, I think, was opened this year. While that project was reviewed under a separate administrative track by senior planner Susie Murray, its real-world cumulative impact on our roads is now active. Adding a new 17-home subdivision on Montclair Drive will compound these delays. The city planning department must evaluate the cumulative impact of these multifamily additions on our collective evacuation times before granting any amendments or permits for Montclair Drive. And 2 specific questions for the record. We need a cumulative impact analysis and an environmental impact report and evacuation bottlenecks about the evacuation bottlenecks, given that Montclair Drive is a residential road leading toward an already strained intersection. So my name is Catherine Polonis. I don't know if I said that. I live at 532 Calistoga Road. Thank you.
So thank you for the question, and I'll admit I was expecting evacuation questions a lot earlier in this meeting. So I'm glad somebody finally asked something so I can discuss it. So how many people were stuck in traffic in 2020? How many people did it take about 3 or so hours to get from Rican Valley to Highway 12? How many people did it in about 15 to 20 minutes? Good. So, oh, good. Right. So a couple things I want to point out is obviously in 2017, we had no control over evacuations, alert and warnings, nothing. That is all, as I'm sure many of you know, has changed significantly, and we controlled essentially the keys to the castle. 2 things that a lot of people don't fully understand is in 2020, we were actually evacuating so quickly, we had to slow down. We had to give SRPD, Santa Rosa Police Department, sorry, I used an acronym, just kidding. But we had to let Santa Rosa Police Department an opportunity to get into position. So we had to actually slow down our evacuations. But one of the things that we educated a ton on between 2017 and 2020 was know your ways out. And we had been educating and getting people to evacuate the opposite direction of the way they would typically go. And then despite all that education, everybody still did the exact opposite thing that we want them to do. And all of them went down Highway 12 towards Farmers Lane. We knew that night that we had 4 hours to evacuate everybody because we happened to have night air attack or a night helicopter flying overhead that came from the actual original glass fire. in Napa and told us this fire will be in the city limits in 4 hours. So we evacuated knowing that we had time to get people out and that, yes, they're going to sit in traffic, but we had the time to let them sit in traffic. We talked to a lot of people that actually went out through Highway 12 to Warm Springs Road to Bennett Valley Road and onto Farmers Lane, and they did it in like 20, 25 minutes. But we realized we're not going to be able to change human behavior, and we have development that's coming, regardless of whether it's this project, whether it's the Mahonia Glens, or whether it's just the existing population that we have in our community. And so we have instituted what we refer to as a flush plan, where staff from TPW and fire have the ability now to control the intersections, primarily along Farmers Lane. We put battery backups in intersections. So we now have the ability to what we refer to as flush East Santa Rosa. This plan is literally designed just for your area, for that entire east side of Santa Rosa. And we've taken it a step further where now we know that you guys have the potential to be impacted downstream or upstream from Oakmont, to where if we now institute an evacuation to reduce your impacts, we have A, the flush plan, and B, we have a plan to force Oakmont residents 100 cars one direction, 100 cars the other direction. So that has, like I said, regardless of whether this project goes through, I want to also help educate and confirm a lot of different things that we're doing in this community to reduce some of the risks and some of the concerns specific to evacuations.
I'd like to point out the difference between planning.
What was that again?
I'd like to point out the difference between your plans as people sitting behind desks and waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and seeing the sky glowing, or driving down trying to get out by Sinead and seeing the fires in Fountain Grove and deers running across the road. I mean, that's the difference. I heard no sirens that night. I went down to the center of the city, and the only people there expecting to see somebody hurting traffic or helping people, there was no one there. There was nothing in place. There were 3 homeless guys down there and nobody else except the Corix people who kindly let me spend the night, and me and my dog in their home. A lot of people burned to death in that fire, and a lot of people ran to the garage and found out they didn't have power to open their garage door and burned, one person did. And the president of the college, Sonoma State, found herself running down the road barefoot in her nightgown. So there's a panic of reality, and there's all the plans. And when you have a bunch of people living in 17 houses up there in the dry weeds, and you have a bunch of people right there at the bottleneck of 12 and Calistoga Road, you have a lot of people trying to get out, and they have no place to go. They're not going to drive to Calistoga or Sonoma. They're going to try to go to Santa Rosa. And I just think that it's careless and maybe doesn't really show the gravity of experience of, people who've lived through this a lot. And I really think that there should be some actual engineers looking at this in a more serious way. And I don't know that getting stuck in the city government is actually going to help with the gravity that we need, attention to this situation. I think it's a very bad idea, and I don't think it should progress between the pre-application stage beyond that.
Okay, and we'll take our last comment.
Great, thank you very much. Janice Carmen here. And I have a lot of issues with this building on the hill. And the fire is just one of the mitigating circumstances. And the situation is that there are multiple projects. They've been represented by the city of Santa Rosa. They've been presented as meetings such as this. I've attended at least 2 of them, maybe more. I've also lived here long enough to have known the people that owned Anoka Nursery. They lived next door to me, 2 houses up. I knew the people that owned Prickett's originally. I was asked about how I felt about that when it developed on the corner of Highway 12. I recently ran for Congress, and while I was running for Congress, I spoke with a lot of the people in my area again. And I also found out about some really serious automobile accidents that were on the corner of Highway 12 and Calistoga Road. And in one, it appears that a person burned alive in a car, which I never heard anything about. I could have been out of town or something. I don't know. I read the paper like it's the only thing going. But the road is very poor. At Calistoga Road, it goes up on a hill. And I was complaining about it quite a lot before our former city manager left. It needed to be corrected, and it needed to have a crosswalk so the people weren't running across the street. Also, I was evacuated 2 times. The first time, I was able to get out, and I went to a shelter, and I was sort of the meet and greet person at the shelter. People were coming in from Oakmont. They were coming in from down the hill, up on the hill rather, at Los Alamos Road. Los Alamos Road was devastating. And Los Alamos Road, there were accidents happening on the road as it was happening. There were people having heart attacks there. They weren't able to get down. They didn't want to stop, even though they were having auto accidents. It was very serious. Now, what I'm talking about is the continual building that you have meetings like this. Now, I went to a meeting in 2016 for a neighbor who was going to think about subdividing property, I think it was. And another neighbor asked, he said, "I'll just buy all your property." He said, "Sell it to me." And the neighbor that had the property said, "No." Well, this is a picture of the property and the stop working on the property that was totally illegal. And I was calling about EIR. I was trying to contact the city. I was trying to contact the county. I'd actually spoken about this property because it was a 38-acre property that had slowly been encroached upon and became this illegal project. It took almost 8 months for the city to send this notice to me and to get these people to start doing some mitigation. Now, this is a real serious problem that people just start doing something and don't have any permits at all. And they start cutting heritage trees. That's one of the problems. This notice actually says heritage trees. This property was a Los Guilicos property. It was a Rancheria property. It was Miwok property. And I used to write notes and put them up and say, "This is sacred. Enjoy it. Please don't litter." It was a full property when I moved here 40 years ago, but now this was one of the only areas that was left. Now, I was running for Congress. These people are neighbors, and they keep me in their sights while they were working there, and I ran for city council. They were interfering with my day every day. I was trying to get to a meeting to meet the city executives. I wasn't able to go because their trucks were parked in my driveway. And that happened at that time. This time, when I'm running for Congress, the day before the election is over, they come to the area and they start in on the project again, which I didn't have time to stop, go to the city again, find out what was going on. Again, I was never notified about any resumption of this property happening. Getting back to Los Alamos Road and the intersections from Oakmont. It's very, very serious. And I was very happy to hear, I think it was a fireman response today. I'm sorry, I don't know who this is. A fireman response about how it's changed. And I know there's been a lot of fire education, but the fire isn't the only thing. I was at Costco this weekend, and I'm also really careful about the climate. I try to watch it. I believe in building, but I want it to be clean building and smart building. While I was there, I could see down the way that the climate was totally white because of all the people that are allowed to build. And there's 6 projects going on Highway 12.
Janice, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt because we do need to wrap up the meeting. We are a half an hour over. Okay, are we good? Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, so thank you everyone for coming this evening. And as we mentioned a few times, again, just a reminder, no application has been submitted at this point. However, if and when it does get submitted, then there will be a robust and comprehensive review process, and the city will be monitoring it along the way. And again, this will ultimately come before the Planning Commission should the application be seen through to finalization. So thank you all, and please go ahead and submit any comments to Hannah Michelson's email, and we'll be collecting them all along the way. All right, thank you, and have a good evening.